Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Interviewing Wednesdays. It's October 5th, 2022. We're glad you're with us this afternoon. Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, you give consent for your name and picture to appear. Please note that any comments you put in the Zoom chat window will not appear in the recording. For those people on Zoom, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please just put your questions there. If you'd like to network with everybody else who's on the call, please put in your contact information. It's a great opportunity for you to connect with everybody else who's here. You can reach out to people, let them know you were with them today watching Interview Wednesday, what you like, what you didn't like, but a great way to connect with other people. For those people on Facebook, if you have any questions, please just put your questions in the comment field. We are monitoring that feed and we'll be sure to get those questions answered for you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Back in 2008, I started a website called careerdfw.org, a website to help those who are unemployed in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Just about 10 years ago this week, I started a second website, careerusa.org, a site to help those people around the United States. I have written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search that you may not know. It is available on Amazon, or if you see me in person, I usually have copies with me. Since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. The group's been around since the late 1990s, and I'll tell you about our upcoming program at the end of this session. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team, also known as the PIT Crew. And you'll hear more about that in just a moment. Well, first off, I'd like to start, give you a little introduction to Walt Glass and the Interview Success Workshop. Good afternoon, Walt. You're muted. There you go.
Yeah, I was hunting for it. Sometimes the taskbar disappears and you got to play around to get it to show up. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Interviewing Wednesdays. I'm Walt Glass, and I love to help people gain skills and confidence for successful job interviews. Let me define successful. It simply means that you have found a good fit. They have found a good fit. A successful interview can also mean it's not a good fit. And so you found that out. So a place not to work, okay? So success can be not just getting a job offer, it can be making sure this is the right place or making sure this is probably not the best place for you. So how do I do it? I do the Interview Success Workshop. It's free. You have to be registered to attend. That QR code that shows on the screen will start an email that you can send to me, edit with a couple of items of information, and I'll send you some availability. I'll almost always reserve Tuesdays from 9 to 11 Central for the workshop, and others as demand might come along. So what do we do in a workshop? We are focusing on selling ourselves, and that's defined as I am, I do, I help. How do we sell who we are? How do we sell what we do? And how do we sell the value that we can bring by combining who we are with what we do to achieve the results they're looking for us to achieve in this particular position? And it's also a way to differentiate ourselves from other candidates. You'd be surprised how often I hear the same type of phrase over and over and over again in response to a question. And we want to kind of avoid those, and I can point those out to you. We don't need to say that's a good question after every question. We just need to learn how to pause and think of an answer. So we cover those kind of things. We cover the basic 12 questions, options, strategies, structures, and ways that we can answer a question depending on the question, who's asking, and where you are in the process. So it's one of opinions and some ideas and suggestions to you so that you can take a look at that and say, how can I better prepare and better practice for the interview? You will get a video of your interview. You'll get a handout. I have an hour-long video that goes with the handout that covers most of the things that we're talking about, not 99% of them, so that you can use that now and in the future. So I'll be glad to hear from you. The main difference between the PIT Crew and the Interview Success Workshop is informality. Very informal, very relaxed. We're focusing on learning to improve our skills. This is not a mock interview, although I would strongly suggest that you do a mock interview with the practice interview team if you haven't heard about them. But they do mock interviews with the panels. And so it's a very, very good way to increase your skills and confidence. And the motto is, every time you practice, you get better. So I'll be glad to hear from you. We don't have to worry about the hot seat. We don't see our lights flashing in front of our eyes. We don't have that stress. We don't have that anxiety. We're just there to learn. And I call it learning without squirming.
Walt, thank you very, very much. All right, time to hear from the practice interview team. Good afternoon, Ron.
Good afternoon. My name is Ron Layton, and I'm presently running the practice interview team. And so I want to make sure that everybody understands our goal. Our goal is to build your confidence so that when you get in an interview, you can confidently tell your story. You're not stumbling around. You know your user stories, and you're ready for that interview. So we do that in a couple of ways. Number one, all of these interviews are free. They're done by actual hiring managers that have made their living managing teams and hiring people. We recommend you practice early before you get in the interviewing cycle, and you practice often. You can't just do one and done, or you can do it, but you can do it as many times as you want. I know a while back, I was out of work for a long period of time. And during that period, I actually did 5 interviews with the practice interview team, with some of the people on here, with Walt and Jeff, to make sure that I kept my skills up. Now, there is an email you'll see there where to email the request to do your interview. We highly suggest you give us at least 2 to 3 days so that we can coordinate the interviewers with yourself from that perspective. When you do that, we will need a resume, we'll need a job description, and prospective times for the interview. Okay. We also provide one-on-one coaching. If you just maybe need some coaching instead of a practice interview, there's also, Jeff has been kind enough to facilitate a one-way video interview application. So there are times when a company may just literally want you to do a one-way and you're staring at a screen. And so Jeff will talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. So that in a nutshell is the practice interview team known as PIT. We call ourselves the PIT crew. So thank you very much for attending today. We would highly appreciate recommendations for people to go through this, or if you've been a hiring manager before, join the interview panelists. Thank you very much.
Ron, thank you very, very much. All right, as Ron mentioned, we can, if you'd like to schedule a one-way interview, you can reach out to Walt Glass or myself, and we will get that scheduled for you. This is a professional software package. It's very strange because you're talking to the camera and there's nobody else around. There's nobody at the other end. They ask you a question, you've got a couple minutes to answer it. Walt's is formatted one way, mine's formatted a little bit different. Totally free. We don't watch it. Once we send you the link to take the interview, when you've completed it, we'll send you the link to watch it back, and you can watch it if that's what you want, or if you want to share it with anybody, you're welcome to do so. But this is just here to help you. And remember, when you practice your interviewing skills, your resume and your LinkedIn profile isn't going to get you a job, but it does get you a phone call. How well you practice your interviewing skills, that's what's going to get you your next job. So today we're going to be talking about interview openings and closings and interview follow-up, how to start an interview, how to end the interview. This is really important because if you can get off on a really good foot, and if you can close the interview out in a really powerful way, that's the kind of tips that we're going to share today. So Mark McDonald and Walt Glass are going to be doing the presentation. This is pre-recorded. It's about 60 minutes long. So if you're only hanging in to the top of the hour, you're going to miss the last part of it. We will answer any questions you have. Just put your questions into the chat window as you come up with them, and we will be sure to get those answered for you at the very end of the session. So let me get this thing going here.
Topic number 6, interview openings and closings and interview follow-up. And here is the Okay, there we go. It's working. Here is the whole list of all 13 sessions. And Walt and I put a lot of thought into what was going to be in each session and what order the sessions came in. But nowadays, since we've done it 4 times, there's recordings of all of these sessions available on the Career USA YouTube channel. So you can look at them at any order you want. And if there's a particular thing you want to focus on, just go right to that session. The most recent, we completed the most recent series at the end of March. So January, February, March, we went through all 13 of these sessions. Today, we are on session number 6. And if you look at the structure of these, if you want to find a particular topic and you don't know where to look, the first 5 are all about preparing for the interview, okay? And interviewing in general and a specific interview. And so most people, when they're new to the job search, they just don't realize how much preparation is necessary to do well. And so we spent 5 sessions going over the various aspects of getting prepared to interview. And today starts the second group of 5, which is all about interviewing. And so we start with openings and closings. We start at the beginning and the end and follow up. And then we'll be talking about discussing compensation and why did you leave your last job, the thing that I coach on, and asking questions and building rapport. So there's a lot of good sessions coming up. But if you want to focus in on one, you can go to the Career USA YouTube channel and you can find those sessions and take a look at them in advance. The final 3 topics are kind of some advanced things that build on the 10 that came before. So it's a good idea. You can go and take a look at those, but they will refer back to the previous sessions pretty extensively. So there you go. That's the 13 topics, about 20 hours worth of material, all about interviewing. But this is from my experience with the pit crew, the feedback that we give, okay? And it kind of comes in kind of basically 4 categories. We give a lot of feedback on how to prepare better or how to be better prepared. And as I just talked about, there's 5 sessions in this series just about preparation. But people come to the interview, like I said, when they're new, they don't really understand or realize how much preparation is necessary. So we end up giving feedback on that. We give feedback on getting a good start, and that's what we're going to talk about today. That's an opening, is getting a good start to your interview, and that'll set the stage for what comes to follow. Finishing strong is what we call it in the pit crew, and so that's closings we're going to talk about today, finishing strong. And then the 4th thing is a big group of things we talk about: taking the lead and avoiding a crash. So this is differentiating yourself from other candidates and avoiding a mistake. And so the next 4 sessions will cover these. For instance, how to build rapport and asking questions is a very good way to differentiate yourself from other candidates and take the lead. So in the pit crew, this is the kind of feedback you'll get. And avoiding a crash, is avoiding topics or phrases or ways of saying things that are going to do more harm than good. Now, also today, which usually we don't give feedback in the pit crew, but it's a topic for today because it's related to finishing strong, is your interview follow-up. Okay, so getting a good start and finishing strong. This is a quick review, and then I'm going to do a deeper dive into these topics. So here we go. I break down getting a good start into 3 parts. The greeting, and in my recommendation, the greeting should be a statement of enthusiasm, and I'll break that down in a little bit more. You will often get, about 2/3 of the time, you'll often get an invitation to make an opening statement. So the interviewer may say something: tell me about yourself, tell me about your background that's relevant to this position, let's review your resume, or what brings us together today. Almost anything they say, you're going to answer with your opening statement, which is not very long. It's only a couple of minutes long. So even if they say, let's review your resume, you want to answer with your opening statement, and then you can say, well, where would you like to start on my resume? And then your first question. So there's 3 parts to getting a good start: the rule of 3, the statement of enthusiasm, which is part of your greeting, your opening statement, the answer to the question, tell me about yourself, what brings us together today, and then the first question you ask, and the last one's probably the most important, is to start asking questions early in the process. And I'm suggesting it's just part of the first 3 or 4 minutes. You end that 3 or 4 minute introduction with a question or 2 or 3. Now, Finishing Strong similarly has 3 parts. You need to ask questions about the role and the hiring process. So this is just a summary real quick. You need to ask for feedback to discover objections. So don't forget to ask for feedback at the end of your interview, and ask for the job or ask to advance to the next step. So many people do not do this. They don't close it out strong. And so we're going to talk about that today. So let's go into breaking this down. I recommend that your greeting be a statement of enthusiasm. Okay, now you're going to, say, hello, my name is Mark. Isn't the weather nice today? And thank you for your time. But I would say, and you can say that stuff to niceties to show that you're human, but you need to also say, I'm really excited to have this conversation today because, and you're going to say a couple of things about the job. Okay, you're going to say 2 things you believe you can help them with, and those are based on your preparation at this point, right? The job description and any conversations you may have had with the recruiter. But 2 things, very specific things you believe that you can help them with, which is why you're excited, interested, enthused to have a conversation with them today. So here's an example. I really enjoy helping companies recover cash using inventory control and flexible logistics. Okay, so that's a couple of specific things, inventory control and flexible logistics, that you are good at, you enjoy doing, and it's why you're interested in this job. Now, there's 3 parts to the motivation, and I'm going to talk about this a little more in the tell me about yourself, but you want to make sure in this introduction, this first few minutes of the conversation, that you address why you're motivated, and it's motivated for this job, this company, and at this time. So let's keep going. And so include in your greeting, and your greeting could be as short as, I'm happy to have this conversation because, and then mention 2 ways you can help them out. Now, I have a little formula here for tell me about yourself, and Walt's got his version as well. There's quite a few things you could put in here, and Walt will talk about the options. I've kind of over the years come up with the thing that I want people to focus on, and here's the way I suggest you do it. Okay, you start with your professional training. Okay, so you don't, unless you know that you went to the same college, for instance, or you went to, you have you may have lived in the same town. There's no need to start any sooner than your professional training. So that might be college, that might be military service, it might be, on-the-job training. I started my first job, right out of high school as a bookkeeper, and advanced to accounting. So just talk about the beginning, how you got started in your career and your professional training associated with that. And then you might include 1 personal tidbit. A little personal tidbit might be, I've lived in Dallas for 30 years, or I just moved to Dallas a month ago or a year ago, or I'd like to play tennis. Just a little personal tidbit, something that might be interesting about you or puts your job search in context. If you've lived in Dallas area for all of your professional life, then this is probably likely where you're going to stay. You might not be that open to relocation, but include something, a little personal tidbit about you in the first few seconds. Okay, so you're setting up a story. I have this training, I have these achievements, and I'm interested in coming to work for you because. Okay, so the second part is you're going to mention 3 achievements related to this position. And this is not what you did, it's just what you achieved. It's the result of your STAR story, or the result of a challenge that you may have faced. So 3 achievements related to the position. You can also include an area of expertise. If you claim some expertise, if you've done something for 10,000 hours, I think is the definition of an expert, then, or one definition of an expert, then you can throw that in if it's clearly something they're going to be interested in. But you also want to say, I have this expertise and I've helped companies, do X, Y, and Z with this expertise. Okay. Now, these also need to be not generic. I mean, you're going to say, I have expertise or I achieved this, that, or the other thing, but that's a specific instance. Okay. So it's not a general thing. So when they say, you said you had this expertise in X, Y, Z, tell me more about that. You're going to have a story to tell, a very specific achievement story. Okay. So one of the mistakes that people make is they become very professorial, bookish. They say, they talk like, they read it out of a book, and it's not personalized to them. It's not specific to something that they've actually done. And that's very hard to remember and not very impressive. Anybody can read a book. So you want to tell a specific instance so it's much more believable. And then the third part, okay, so that's a minute for your professional training and 3 achievements or areas of expertise where you can be of help. The last minute of the 2 minutes you have for this introductory statement is your motivation. So you want to finish up the motivation by talking about how this position fits into your career arc and why you were interested in this company and why now. Okay, and the why now needs to be more than, I'm out of work, so I need a job. The why now is, I was trained, I've had these roles, and I've achieved these things that helped my company, and now I'm ready to move on to the next step in my career, and that's why I'm interested in this company and this job at this time. It's time in the arc of my career to be taking this next step. So it could be a increase in responsibility. It could be some breadth. It could be moving on to another industry. But talk about your motivation right up front. So that answers that question for the interviewer before they even have to ask. Now, you've taken maybe 3 minutes, depending on how much the interviewer interacts with you, 3 or 4 minutes, and you've introduced yourself, you've talked about why you're motivated, you've talked about some of the achievements that you have very briefly, and then you want to start asking questions now. And last week we talked about analyzing the job description, and if you were there, or if you've seen the presentation before, there's a lot of reasons to doubt that a job description is completely accurate. And includes everything that's important to the current hiring manager at the current time. So oftentimes they're old. Oftentimes they've just been built over the years. More and more stuff has been added to them. So there may be some obsolete things on there. So you really need to take the advantage early in the process. And as part of getting a good start asking questions to clarify that the job description is a good reference. And if it's not, what is the right information? So you might ask questions like, here we go. So you're going to ask questions. You need to be persistent. You may want to ask more than 1 question. As a matter of fact, I would ask at least 2 questions. And this may be a little bit awkward because early in the in this interview is only 3 or 4 minutes in. You're starting to kind of take over the interview by asking your own questions. So you may want to soften them a little bit and say, I'm curious to know, or, I did some research and it was really interesting that. So kind of bring that up in a more formal and softer way. But you definitely want to get these questions asked and answered. What are the characteristics of top performers in this role? It's a good one to ask. From your perspective, what are the most important objectives or requirements for this position? In your opinion, what is the most important contribution that the company expects from this role? So you're asking defining questions. These are all questions how will I be able to help you? How will I be able to help you? This is what you want to know. And you may find out that the things that are on the job description are fairly accurate, and you may find out that there's additional things that the hiring manager is interested in. And you don't just have to ask these questions of the hiring manager. You can ask any interviewer, and you can personalize it. You know, from your perspective, I know you're not going to make the final decision, right? I know you're not going to make the final decision, but from your perspective, what is the most important contribution that the company expects from this role? So it doesn't have to be the hiring manager who asks these questions. As a matter of fact, you should try to get the perspective from everyone you interview with about what they think are the most important characteristics of top performers in this role and what they hope to achieve with this role, what specific skills that you could bring to the table that it would make their life easier, what in your background would be most impactful. So you're not going to ask all of these questions, but you want to pick a couple that are suitable to you, that you think, you know, fit with your personality, and get them to talk about what they need. Now, here's one I think is a little dicey, and it's just a matter of phrasing. You know, you can say, what are your most important objectives? Or you could say, what kind of problems do you have? Well, or what kind of obstacles are you facing? I would just avoid in any way, shape, or form asking a negatively oriented question. If somebody asked me that question, I'd say, well, you know, I don't have any major problems. You know, why would I admit that? Okay. So just don't put them in that awkward situation to talk about negative things. Give them a chance to talk about their opportunities and how you can help. Okay, let's move on to finishing strong, because what comes at the end of the interview is a reflection of how you started the interview, and especially those questions you asked. Okay, so if you ask what are the most important characteristics of top performers in this role, and they tell you, then when you finish, you're going to remind them that you have those positive attributes they're looking for. And probably during the process, you've had a chance to tell a story or two about those. And so how you start is connected to how you finish. So, but you want to make sure that you get in the questions. Now, these are prioritized questions. You need to make a list of questions before the interview. You're going to prioritize those. In a later session, we talk about asking questions, and some of those questions you're going to get to ask during the interview, the middle part of the interview, between the opening and the closing is a big chunk of time where they ask questions and you provide answers, but you also want to ask your own questions. But there's some specific ones at the end that you want to have about the process, and some kind of forward-thinking questions like this one. If I were a spectacular success in this role after 6 months, what would I have accomplished? Okay, that's a good question to ask at the end. You know, at the beginning, you've asked what are the most important priorities, and now you're asking what specifically would I have accomplished, and ask about the hiring process, the next steps, who to contact, things like that. So sometimes you don't have a lot of control over this part of the interview because it may be a 45-minute interview or a 30-minute interview, and you know, the interviewer decides when they're going to kind of hand it over to you. Do you have any questions for me? So you need to be aware that you may not have a lot of time, so that's why they need to be prioritized. On the other hand, if you have some control over the pace of the interview, then you need to realize that you got a lot of questions that you'd like to ask at the end. So see if you can make that happen. You definitely want to ask for feedback as well, okay? And a very straightforward way, you know, is how do you see me fitting in? Okay, how do you see me fitting in? And a lot of people think, I've heard, you know, that you really shouldn't be asking for objections because that's what the interviewer will remember, you know, is that you are concerned about how you might not measure up. But this is the only time you're going to get feedback. I mean, if you're not a good fit, the next step is, you know, we're moving on with more qualified candidates, and you're never going to hear why they didn't pick you or where you came up short. It's also a very positive character trait to ask for feedback. So How do you see me fitting into this role? Are there any areas in which you feel that I fall short of your requirements? I'm going to post up a document towards the end here of 200 questions you may want to ask. And there's several in that list of asking for feedback and closing the deal. And so there's several in there ways you can ask questions to solicit feedback from them. Another common way to do it is to offer up that you may not have explained everything as adequately as you could have. And so, is there anything that I may have not explained to your satisfaction, to see if they may have misunderstood an answer or still have some doubt about a question that you ask. So ask for feedback, and then ask for the job or ask to advance to the next step. And again, this 200 question document that I'll post up has several examples of how to ask for the job. And so you want to tie this request to advance to the next step to your statement of enthusiasm and your opening statement. And so you talked about ways you could help. You're going to summarize the ways you can help, the ones that you brought in with you and the ones that you've learned about during the interview. That's summarizing your value, and then express your desire to join their organization, to begin to help them, and or to continue in the hiring process. Now, all I want to say about post-interview activities, the follow-up, and Walt's going to cover this in a lot of great detail, is that you can continue to influence the outcome of an interview by what you do after the interview is over. So never forget that. You still have an opportunity after the interview is over to influence the outcome. Walt will talk about how to do that. Well, towards the end here, so you guys don't get distracted, I'm going to post up that document on the chat window. So it's 200 interview questions. It's a good document, and stand by for that. Okay, Walt, I think you're up.
All right, well, let's continue on then. It's very interesting because when Mark and I got together, we decided topics in collaboration and order, modified a little bit for the second generation and maybe a little bit more for the third, and now we're into the fourth. But we didn't collaborate much on the content. And so in an effort to confuse you, we're going to give you two opinions. No, that's not true. What we're going to do is give you a couple of alternatives or a couple options of things. And so just about everything Mark has already told you, I'm going to say it again almost, but it's a little bit different way, a little bit different order. But everything he says completely applies to the same thing that I would say, and maybe just a little bit differently. So we'll go back to this basic question in an interview, is what are we selling? And you heard me talk about the interview success workshop, but we want to know what they're buying. All right, so are we selling what they're buying? That's the whole match. We got to figure out what they're buying so that we can sell that to them. That's what salespeople do. They find out the needs, the issues, the concerns, the problems, whatever it is, before they start offering solutions. And candidates don't often do that. I would liken it to the car dealer. When you walk in, they would say, would you like to buy this truck, without asking one question? And we just start selling some things without finding out. That's not what salespeople do. And everyone agrees that we're in a selling mode. The interview is a selling situation. So what are they buying? And so, of course, my model is the I am, I do, I help. They buy who we are, our characteristics, soft skills, personality, culture fit, what we do, the kind of activities we do, the kind of hard skills that we have. And then the I help, because they don't hire us just to do things. They hire us to not only do them, but to have results that achieve the objectives of what they're trying to achieve. So with that in mind, everything that I'm suggesting is going to include some I am, I do, I help in it. The main thing that I see lacking in most candidates' interviews is the I help side. I get a lot of I do, I get some I am, and I get very little of I help, which is the main differentiator. So just including that. So let me ask you this, which is the most important? You can put it in your chat window and hit which one do you think is most important of the three? I like your idea of iHelp. And all three are basically extremely important. However, would you agree that if you're not likable, if your soft skills and personality don't match, if it's not a culture fit, it does not matter about what you do and how you can help. If they're not seeing you as a person they would like to work with, if they don't see you as a person that has the kind of personality and the soft skills that are necessary to accomplish what they're wanting you to do. I mean, I had a person, I said, I inherited this person. And I said, he is fantastic in the I do side and the I help side in his job. But please don't let him talk to anyone, no one, not another colleague, not another employee, certainly not a customer. I mean, I just wouldn't want him to do that. But he did a very good job of all the other things. And so the I am side of him was a little bit strange. He was very different, thought a lot of different ways. So anyway, I say if the culture doesn't fit, why interview? And one of the things I suggest when you're doing your networking and you're searching and targeting companies is find out about the culture, because if the culture doesn't match you, why go interview? So that would be my answer on which is the most important, but they all are certainly critical. I'm glad a lot of you said I help in there. So if you heard about Moravia and his communication theory on communications of feeling and attitudes, he came up with a study that said 7% of the messages in the words that are spoken, 38% the way they're said, and 55% is really everything else. And today, everything else is going to be your facial expression, because they can't see much of anything else on an online session. And so as an example, I thought you drove to Dallas. I thought you drove to Dallas. I thought you drove to Dallas. I thought you drove to Dallas, and I thought you drove to Dallas. Okay. In an email, those are all the same 7 words. But in the intonation, there's 6 different meanings coming up with just how you say the question. So we want to take advantage of that, because how we speak is very important, not just only what we say, but how we say it. So our facial expression and body language, what we say are the words we choose, and how we say it, of course, is the intonation that we give. Well, my philosophy is this: what are you thinking prior to the interview? So you want to get in, you want to do your greeting, you want to do your opening, okay? You want to do all those things, but what is your mindset? What are you thinking? And this has a great deal to do with success in an interview. So the things that I'm suggesting must be genuine, all right? I never want you to lie or to be somebody that you're not. I want you to be yourself. But what are you thinking when you walk in? And there's 2 ends of the spectrum. Please, God, help me answer these questions, all right? And so I'm just trying to get through the interview and do the best I can. I'm very nervous. I have a lot of anxiety and fear. And guess what? It's going to sound like and what it's going to look like when we talk. Well, it's very natural. But if we prepare and we practice, we come to the workshop, we go to the pit crew. How many times do you think you need to practice before you gain some confidence, right? It's more than once, right? So it takes a few times. And we find many people repeating their interview practices. I think, Mark, maybe the maximum, I think one was 9 or something like that. I can't, your visual is covered up by the chat window. So anyway, this many, right? Whatever it was.
Yeah, it's 9. Yeah.
Okay. So they practiced a lot. And I remember Jared came back and said, I landed, and the interview was so easy, so much easier than the ones that I had here at the workshop and at the pit crew. Well, you go, duh, why do you think that is? And so you are learning during those sessions. Now you're applying into the real interview. So learning is your primary word for practicing, getting better. So the word we choose, the tone we use, and how we look sends a complete message. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is the greeting? Now, Mark talked about a greeting, gave you some details about that. So, but how important is that? So we say it's very important. So what kind of greeting do I usually hear? I'm glad to be here. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. And that's it. All right. That's not different. It's not showing any enthusiasm, any excitement, or any interest. Now, for those of you that don't like to jump on the table and dance with enthusiasm, the word is interest. You have strong interest in the job in the company. So We want to show that and demonstrate that, but it comes from what we're thinking. What we're thinking drives the other things. It drives our words and how we say it. So you can't just say the words, I'm excited to be here. If you're not smiling and you're not grinning and you're not really looking like you are excited to be there, then it's not going to work, right? So how you look and act can matter as much as your ideas, so you don't get a second chance to make that first impression. The amazing thing is we are judging people, and we judge very quickly about a person. And I'd say it basically comes down to 3 choices: plus, minus, neutral. All right. But we will look at a person and our minds, and we're built as judging individuals. We're almost like the zeros and ones in a computer. On, off, yes, no. And we can do that very, very quickly. It's not really fair, but that's what really happens. So let me ask you this. I'd like you to put up a poll, if you would. How long does it take for us to determine trustworthiness? I'm just picking one thing, trustworthiness, upon meeting somebody for the first time. So you got your A, B, C, D, E choices. I'm seeing B, B, 1 to 5 seconds, 6 to 10. Well, thank you for those responses. So what did we find out? So Princeton University did a search about making decisions and judgments about trustworthiness, competence, likability within a fraction of a second after seeing someone's face. Trustworthiness was within a 1/10 of a second. So for those of you that answered less than a second for trustworthiness, you were the ones that agreed with the research from Princeton. Very, very fast. And so these are not cognitive processes. We just see them and make them. We don't stop and think about it. We don't look at a person and say, well, I don't think that person looks very trustworthy. We don't do that. It just bang, it's just there. So we missed about everything else for the following 3 seconds. So everybody who said everything's under 3 seconds would be right from the Princeton study. In about 3 seconds, we're going to make those decisions. I'm going to see you before I hear you. All right. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see you smiling, but it comes from within. All right. Because if we're really genuinely excited to be here and we're interested in having a conversation and talking with this person, we will be smiling. All right. So a lot of people smile at the greeting, but in most of the candidates I see, turn it off after that. All right. Well, it's okay in the workshop because we're in the learning mode. I'm not expecting you to be well prepared. I'm not expecting you to be well versed, well practiced. I'm expecting you to say, I got to learn how to prepare. I got to learn fundamentals. And I can't learn fundamentals, I understand that, and smile at the same time. So I don't really expect all that. But when you get into the mock interviews, when you go to Mark McDonald's pit crew and start interviewing, now we should be smiling. We should be energetic, have some kind of interest. So the greeting. There's a few things I suggest about the greeting. Know your audience, dress appropriately. We talked about smiling, the eye contact. So eye contact today is looking into the camera. I still have to work after how long have we been doing this? Over a year now, right?
Yeah.
And I'm still having to remind myself to look in the camera and imagine that I'm talking to a person, not a machine. And it's not that easy to do. Even today, my eyes will want to wander and look at the person or something like that. But getting used to that. So that definitely has to be practiced. And if we're in place, I don't know. I think bowing is going to be the universal greeting anymore because we're not going to touch anybody. We're not going to do elbows and we're not going to do handshakes or whatever. But anyway, if you're meeting, we want to have a medium firm handshake. And basically, the instant you shake hands with somebody, you have a split second to shake hands just like they do. So if there are those that are the gorilla grippers, where you have to grip hard to survive, we generally can feel those right up front. And I know some people, and you just look at their personality and talk to them a little bit, and you can almost tell that they're grippers. They're going to be strong. So take your rings off, do all that kind of stuff for your shake hands with them because you'll have bruises on your fingers. Use genuine energy, enthusiasm, and interest. Energy and enthusiasm for the outgoing people, for those who can't show or don't show normally a lot of interest and excitement, that sort of, enthusiasm and excitement, then interest, because we all should be interested in the job in the company. And if you can exchange business cards, always get contacts information, then prepare and practice, right? So we want to get to this point, and our whole purpose for Mark and I is to have you feel comfortable and confident in an interview. That's why we exist. So the opening statement with genuine interest and or enthusiasm or interest. And so here's my idea about an opening statement. This is not the greeting now, this is the opening statement. The greeting, I would go back to what Mark said, what you include in there. I have something like, it's great to be here. I'm excited to talk with you and have a conversation with you about this particular position. I look forward to getting the information of the expectations, and I think I can help you. Now I'm going to mention a couple of things, just like Mark said. I think I can help you improve your footprint, get more hits on your webpage, whatever it might be. If you're in marketing, those types of things that they will want you to do based on the information that you've had so far. But when you get into tell me about yourself or what brings you here or whatever it might be for that opening statement, here's what I suggest. And this is very, very similar, maybe a little bit out of order, different order than what Mark said, but very, very similar. But we all decided to get into our career at one point in time. Okay, I was in IT for about 40 years. So how did I do that? What happened? Why did I get into IT? So I just say a little thing like, when I was in college, I had a summer job. They put a computer across the hall. I actually left my job on that computer that summer. I've been in information technology ever since. And I love focusing on customer service, okay? The role I'm looking for is a customer relationship manager, a customer success manager, and the IT serving, clients. So that says, one, how I say it tells them I love to do that kind of work. I enjoy doing that. Here's the decision, here's how I got into it. I like doing that, and I like achieving from what I do. I like achieving the results of that. So that's a little bit of I do and I help, and saying I'm excited to be here is a little bit about I am. So here you can give a couple of relevant experience items and a couple of relevant strengths and the value. Remember, Mark is saying, put in an achievement, put in a result. Well, I can in one sentence cover both of these. Say with my experience in developing software, testing software, implementing software, and with my collaboration, my leadership, I'm gonna mention 2 or 3 of my soft skills, I can help you do what? I can help you achieve these things. For example, and then I give 1 or 2 specifics. Same thing really that Mark was saying. Why don't we go ahead and tell them why we left our last position? Unless it was a very negative situation, right? If it was a normal situation, you can say, I left because I was downsized. You don't have to go into any other information than that. So we don't want to stop there though, because I want to say what it is. I want to say it very briefly. I don't want to explain why I was downsized or anything like that. Just say, I had a merger and acquisition, and of the so many whatever it is people that were let go, I was one of them. But that brings me to why I'm here with you today. Mark covered these 2 items exactly the same that I'm covering here. Why do I want this job? What is it about this job that excites me and energizes me? And why do I want to work here? Those are 2 questions we have to be able to answer. Well, why don't we just go ahead and kind of mention it in our opening statement? Not our greeting, but in our opening statement. So I can tell them, what is it about this job, and include a value. So why do I like this job? If I talk to them and says, I really enjoy turning customers around, I enjoy having referenceable clients. I've always met my sales quotas for services, and I'm talking basically in their frame of reference in the I help side. I'm driven by what my results are more than what I do. I love what I'm doing, but I'm driven more by the results. That's very different than saying, I like teamwork, I like this, I like that. All right. You can be specific and put in the I help side. Then state your job focus. Now, this is where we're beginning to get into the question mode. And so specifically, so I'm in transition, I'm really interested in whatever their target position is here at company name, all right? Got to show that smile and that enthusiasm and interest. Are you truly excited about it? Because if you're not, you won't show it. Then you can ask one of those first questions that Mark was talking about too. And so I have two, and they're both on the I am and the I help side. Who are you looking for? What are the characteristics of a top performer? How does you would describe a person to who would what they would need to be successful in this role? You saw several examples of from Mark. And what can I do in the first 6 to 9 months for you to say I've done an outstanding job? Can you tell me when my performance review comes up, what are the criteria in my performance review? I mean, at one point in time, you might want to ask for a copy if they have a formal program and they have all the things in a document that says, here's how we're going to measure you. I might want to get a copy of that. I actually did that in the last interview I had. And I read all the stuff and I called up my interviewer and said, does anybody actually do all of that? and basically I got an answer and said, well, no, not quite. We prioritize, we do all this kind of stuff. Anyway, so when you got the 6 to 9 months, you're kind of looking for something a little bit long-term. We want to copy down on a piece of paper and make a list of their answers. What are they talking about in our characteristics? What are they talking about in this? So that we can now go back and say, well, which one of these would you like to talk about first? I can give an example perhaps of one. So would you like to hear about a time when now that we're into a conversation and we're into discussing the needs that they have. A follow-up question to 6 to 9 months and say, okay, which one of these of the things you told me are the most important? All right, that's just like asking the 30, 60, 90. What do I need to pay attention to first? So follow-on question. So you can go into and start talking about those things. But you always want to stay on their agenda. Now I want to get into closing. Probably the weakest part of candidate interviews that I see is just not closing at all, not closing the sale. It sounds like same thing as if the car salesman would say, well, it's been great talking to you. I've shown you a lot of different cars and automobiles, and I look forward to hearing from you soon, and walk away. Well, I mean, that's just how bad it is. Well, we do the same thing. Candidates do that all the time. They just fail to close. The most popular close is, thank you for taking the time to talk today. I look forward to hearing from you soon. That's my opinion of that close. Okay, that's about as bad as you could possibly get. Now, it's not really a bad thing to say, but we have to say more than that. Okay, now I don't want to do this. I look forward to hearing from you soon. I want to find out when to say. Some people say, how long do I need to wait before I contact them? Well, why don't we ask? We'll find out, and that's part of the close. So here's my outline for the close, and it's similar, very similar to what Mark said. But let's say, okay, it's been great talking with you today. I really am excited and interested in this job. Now, one person in a candidate interview said, this job and this company is the reason I don't need an alarm clock, all right? So he is stating in that sentence that he is energized by this. I mean, he doesn't have trouble getting up and going to work every day or starting work. A very, very strong statement. Now, we've talked today about you need a person who can help you, and then we're going to list some achievements and things that we've discussed, and we're going to summarize our value to the job and to the company. Let's refresh them. Let's get them in their minds the value that we bring. The value that we bring is going to really help the hiring decision, and it's going to affect our salary. Because they may look at us and they have one job description, and we come in and we show them that we can do a lot more than that and add a lot more value to it, then we can negotiate a higher salary. They may go back and change the job description, et cetera. We really would like to do that trial close, and Mark covered that. Similar with me. Do you see me fitting in this role? Is a nice question. That's a good question to ask, like a panel interview. Sometimes we call it asking for the job, but we can't ask everybody for the job except for the person that makes the hiring decision. By the way, that might be in HR, not the hiring manager. So we want to find out really how we stand. You may have a concern about that, but if you ask the question in a negative sense, do you have any concerns? And that seems negative. here's the risk. If they have any concerns, you're not going to get hired. So there's no risk in asking the question. There really isn't. They may not tell you, they may not give them to you, but it's not going to hurt. But you are sending the message with them. Is there anything that I haven't covered? Is there anything that we need to cover more that cause you for concern about this role? And perhaps get a chance to resolve that concern. Okay, that's the purpose of that. And I like asking, he says, do you see me what as fitting as the top candidate? Right? Don't ask, how do I compare to other candidates? They will blow me off if I ask that question. Because they haven't interviewed everybody, they got to get together and make decisions. And it doesn't tell you anything. You might be better than all the other candidates, but they still got 5 more to interview. And that doesn't tell you where you are in relationship to that position. So finding out that if they give you an answer doesn't guarantee you that you are going to get the job. But if you ask that and they say, oh yeah, I think it'd be great, and they see a real positive thing and they react that way, then you know they want you. If they take their eyes away from you, look down, break eye contact, there's a concern. There's something that they might not say, but you watch the body language and there's something. And you can follow up. Says, well, it would appear that you have some concerns or something about me. Is there anything else that I can help you with? Be persistent, pursue. You've already lost the job if you don't try to follow up and find out what it is. So be persistent, but don't be real negative with them. So find out the whole process for hiring and update it as you go along so that you know when their projected start date is, their hiring date, all the people that are going to interview you. You might get their names when those interviews are scheduled. What are their roles? We like to be able to do research and find out about that. What are their timeframes? Who is the decision maker, etc. In other words, find out everything about getting on board. And there's no reason a company cannot describe that to you. Then the very thing, next thing is the next step. So where do we go from here? Will I hear back from someone? Who will I hear back from? Okay, Mark. And if I hear from you, when should I hear back? Okay, well, a week from Friday. Okay, Mark, if I don't hear from you for a week from Friday, can I call you on Monday afternoon? All right. So I try to set up a time. I set up an expectation. And then when I get his voicemail on Monday afternoon, we'll talk about follow-up, and I'll include some things in that, but I end up with that. And if I don't hear from you by another date, I'm going to call you again, and you reset the time frame for calling. So that's some of the follow-up stuff. But get contact information as best you can. All right, you'd like to know. Sometimes it's not as easy to do. You might have to do a little work to do that, but ask them for their email, ask them for that information. Maybe they won't give it to you, but they're not going to not hire you because you asked. I mean, you may as well ask. You can't, it can't be any worse than not having it already. And then smile again, make that eye contact and show that interest and enthusiasm. A statement. Some people say, can you show me my desk where I'd work if on the way out? Something like that. But I can't wait to get started. So let's talk about follow-up now. Which one is the most important, the opening or the closing? If you had to choose, now you know both are very important, but if you had to choose one, which one's the most important? You might not do a very good opening, but through the interview process and through everything in between the opening and closing, and you talk about things, you may be able to do it on much stronger close than you did in the opening. I would say the quality of the opening is strongly related to preparation, right? I mean, it all is, but what you know about the company and the knowledge about the company, what you know about the people, you know, my greeting, if I was greeting and Mark's interviewing me, and I like to say, hi, Mark, it's really good to see you. So I didn't know that you led the pit crew. I used to do an interview success workshop and help people with interviewing skills too. And I find something in common, and I mentioned it in the greeting, right? Very positive. We make a connection right away with something. Oh, you went to SMU? So did I. Did you graduate? Anyway, so the closing would be the one. Now, I would love you to do a good opening, a good middle, and a good closing. So following up. So what do you do after the interview? we used to be able to mail them. Now it's kind of hard to find mailing addresses, but we would like to do a thank you note. Email is okay today. And one person hand wrote the thank you note on a thank you note card, took a picture of it and included it in his email. So I did a little bit of both. And I'll talk a little bit about the thank you note itself. You may need to alert references. If they ask you for any, you definitely need to alert them. And I'll say that you may be contacted. You might want to review with your references what it is you would like them to say about you that they know about and would agree that's relevant to that job position. Take a look at your, sit down and say, okay, let me just look at this interview I just had and how did it go well? And where did I have issues or problems, or where are some things that I can improve upon, and what answers do I need to prove? What more research do I need to do, et cetera? And how would I do that? Because I come up for the next interview, I want to make sure that I'm not doing those same errors or mistakes, or that I'm making improvements. And then research everything that you need to research. Saying, okay, I better look this up and know about this so that I can improve what I'm doing for the next round. So continue to research, all right? Research the people in the company itself, the industry, the competition. All that kind of information is going to help you. It'll also help you when you ask questions. Well, I understand that Tesla's come out with a new electric vehicle, and now GM is introducing the Lyriq. And so I'm looking at GM and says, oh, how is the Lyriq going to beat the Tesla electric vehicle? And by the way, that's what you do. You help produce electric vehicles, so you can help them do that. Connection request on LinkedIn. I have a pet peeve about him. Mark mentioned he enjoys people who put a note in their message. This is how I met you. This is how I know you. This is somebody referred me to you. I attended the Wednesday afternoon interviewing sessions, whatever it might be, and I'd like to connect with you. Now, in order not to feel used, you follow up with a connection saying, well, thank you for the connection. Now, if I am a person who might be able to help you make a connection, this is an opportunity to say, I'd like to talk with you more. Could we set up a time in the schedule to have a phone call or something? And in that phone call, I would ask about you. I would ask things about you. I would ask, what is it that's going on with you? And maybe there's some ways, and how can I help you? So I would look for helping them first, not me first. So that's one of the laws of networking, helping them first. So you might want to follow the company. You might want to look up people in the company. You could certainly look up possibilities for informational interviewing with people that work inside the company. So stay in touch. Think about the hiring manager. They are forever busy with other things. I contend that hiring is at the bottom of the to-do list. It's the bottom of the priorities. I'm really busy doing all these activities because I haven't hired you to do them for me. So, but that's kind of the way things are. And the hiring process seems to be very slow most of the time. Every now and then you hear a great story of where it went very, very quickly, but not usually. So stay in touch. Who do I call if I have additional questions as part of finding out in the interview what you might want to do? Who do I contact? Who would that person be? And you should always think of some questions and say, gee, I was talking with you, we had this and we discussed this. And so I like to ask, you ask a question. Maybe it's through email or call or whatever, however they choose to be connected or contacted. Anything that you might see that might be relevant to them, some industry news or something like that, you just might forward. So I thought you might be interested in the following article about this, okay? And so I found an interesting article on critical race theory. And so I said, gee, this is a good article that really defines what it's all about. And I thought that was pretty good because I keep hearing those terms, but I don't fully understand what it was about. And I might have talked to somebody else, maybe they're interested. Now, that is not what I do on a job at all. We'll not get into the politics or those kinds of things, but it'd be something that would be beneficial to them. I might send some information to Mark, say, Mark, I saw these are the companies that are hiring today. Here's what the research has been, and he might want to know that kind of information, that kind of thing. Congratulate them on recent accomplishments, thanking them for their replies. We don't thank people sufficiently in my book. I spend a lot of time. This person said, here's 6 companies I'm looking at. I went through LinkedIn, found first, second connections, wrote up a table, put all the information down about when they connected with me, what I knew about them, had they taken the workshop before, all that, put it in a table, I sent it to them, and I got an email back said, thanks. And that was the last thing I ever heard. I didn't hear if they contacted anybody. I didn't hear any results. I didn't hear anything about it. And it kind of makes me not want to help so hard the next time, right? Because I feel like, you're just trying to focus on your path, your stuff, and you really don't care about, have interest in letting me know what happened. So that's not the kind of message we want to send. So good, thank you. And continue networking, of course. Your follow-up communication. Here is, what do you put in a thank you note, and what do you say when you do connect with them? We want to reinforce our enthusiasm or interest in the position and the company. I always suggest we not only say we're really excited about this position, but we're also excited about the company. And in that opening statement, here's why. Here's what it is about the company. I ask people in the workshop, say, what do you know about our company? And I generally get some things that are on the first page of their website. And that's about it. So, okay, well, we know we need to go research the company and find out more things. Include at least one way you can help. So we had talked about this in the interview, and so I look forward, I have some ideas where I think I can help us, whatever it is that you can help do. And then what's the next action step and date? All right, you're doing a follow-up, sending a thank yous. And as we agreed, if I don't hear from you by this date, I'll call you this date. That might be the one that you say. And I would hope that that's what you say, that you've covered that in the interview close. And then make it easy, provide your contact information. So if you don't have a signature line on your email that gives your name, your phone number, your email address, and your LinkedIn URL, I think you're missing out. If I wanted somebody to contact me, I have that information right there. If they send me, if I send them an email, they have the information to find me. And if I don't have that, and I'm going to make them work to contact me, there's a good chance they won't do that. So here's an example of a thank you note. I don't know if you can read that. I don't know if I can make it bigger or move it. Not really. But take a second and kind of read that. This person chose to put it in script rather than block print. So that's an alternative, make it a little more personal. All right, so there's an example. And here's what the essence of the elements in the thank you note. A handwritten one is better than typewritten, unless your handwriting is terrible. And so if your handwriting is really terrible, then I'd rather see an email, have it typed in. But handwritten sends a little bit more personal note. It contains a compliment. What interviewers get a compliment? Very, very few. So it's something that you liked about what they said that interested you, a compliment. It's sent very rapidly. My general rule is within 24 hours, all right? Quickly. And send it to everybody to whom you talked. There was one person that was waiting on an interview, and a security guard came over several times because the interview was delayed and asked if he could help or if they wanted anything and do anything. And he said, I should have gotten that person's name and I should have sent him a thank you note. The admin, when I was waiting to go in and talk to the person, the admin that was in there, I said hello and talked a little bit, said, what do you like about the company? Not trying to interrupt their job or anything. Did a little bit of an informational interview. And then I sent a thank you note to the admin. I mean, what admins get thank you notes? But how many admins get to vote on whether to hire you or not? They are a critical part of the hiring process. So here's your decision tree on practicing. Be glad to have you sign up for the interview success workshop. Send a note to the pit crew, to the pit, or DallasPitCrew@gmail.com to Mark with your resume and job description attached, and he will get you scheduled. We will be glad to help you.
All right, that is our,
I
that,
just posted up the 200 question document. For those of you, you can just click on it. I think it downloads automatically to your computer.
right, and there we go. That's the presentation from Mark and Walt. I want to appreciate them. We have several questions here, so Ron or Walt, if you'd like to answer this. Let's see, the first one is, let's see here. What are your recommendations immediately prior to the interview beginning to focus energy or to have a calm demeanor? What would you recommend?
Well, there's always the power pose where, you know, you stand and you stretch, and even some people like to go outside if they can, or go sit in their car and scream to get energy out and get ready. Those are kind of two things that I've seen people do, or maybe I've even done myself.
Yeah. Any other suggestions, anybody?
I don't think it's an either or. You can be a calm person and show interest and show, confidence in your abilities to do the job and your confidence to achieve these things they're looking for you. So it doesn't really come down to say either, because if you're a calm person, you're a calm person, and you can't be anything else but that. If you're not that, then every day you go to work, you got to be whatever that is, and that job will only last about a week. So go ahead and be calm. It's all right. But you can be calm and show interest. You can be calm and indicate that this is still exciting for you, right? So I don't think it's an either or.
I think, one of the ways to stay calm is just being prepared. If you know what you're going to say, if you know your star stories, that's why I like to tell people to write your star stories down and put them on index cards, something you can do before you're sitting in front of the interview, or, you're still sitting out in the car or whatever. You get there early anyway, because you don't want to be late. But while you're sitting there, you can just sort of glance through and go, here's that one. Okay, that was that star, just to sort of refresh your mind and sort of focus in on what it is you're going to do. Vanessa asked, how do you handle a bad interviewer?
You reach across the table, slap them silly. All right, let's talk about that for a moment. You ever had a bad day? You ever had something challenging? You ever been interrupted? So you got to go in and do this interview, and you walk into it and you walk into it very negatively. So it might not be the fact that they're a poor interviewer. It just may be the fact that they're not having a good day, and maybe we can give them a break. The second part of my suggestion on answering that is, how can we help them do a better job of interviewing? If they're not asking us things that they should know about in an interview, wouldn't we can always say, would it be all right with you? Now, this phrase is my little secret key to staying on their agenda. I always want to be in their agenda, but I can try to change it. And I ask their permission to change it. Would it be all right with you? One of the questions was asked, what if you just jump into a behavioral interviewing question? So I'd be glad to answer that. Would it be all right with you if I just gave you a couple of pieces of information about me before I answer and ask permission? The person who's interviewing you says, no, I don't need to know that. I'm a recruiter. I got these questions. You answer them. I write them down and I give them to somebody. And so we just go with the flow. We just go with what, their agenda and what they're doing. But you can still try to change that and see if it might make sense to do that.
The reason that I asked, was the person an antagonist or not? I had an interview cycle with AWS in Seattle where I had 5 interviews in one day. The third one, classical actor, he came in to screw me up. Just the very questions, and I would say something, immediately make it the most negative. So you've got to watch out if you have a period where you've got multiple interviews in the same day or whatever, you might get someone there sent just to throw you off guard. So pay attention to that. And, sometimes that's kind of hard to deal with, but that can't happen.
Okay. Charles said, how do you suggest handling a situation where the interviewer does not provide for a greeting or an opening statement, but is only interested in asking behavioral question number 1?
Yeah, I think what I just said, just ask them, would it be all right with you if I gave you just a little bit of brief information about me before I answer that question? And if they give you permission, you go. If they don't, you go on their agenda.
Right. Susan, I know you've got a question here, but it's more of a technical question. I don't think that none of us are lawyers and able to really answer your question about overtime, but congratulations on getting your contract position. Let's see here. So Charles also said, if an in-person interview, how do you feel about bringing a laptop for taking notes or, being able to share visuals when answering a question?
What type of job are you looking for?
Might have to unmute.
Yes, I just unmuted. This is Charles. I'm a senior finance executive. However, an excellent star story that I have resulted in a program that had 15 different initiatives. And it's very easy to pictorially illustrate that with one slide.
Okay, how would you feel about it if a candidate came to you, Charles, and had their PC and wanted to show you that information?
I would not object. I think it shows digital savviness, and note-taking is very frequent today on laptops.
Well, here's a suggestion for you. The whole world of job search is an opinion. So here's an opinion. You can take it or leave it. All right. Ask permission. Ask, would you like me to show you on the PC, to demonstrate that? And you can have that PC down, in your hip pocket or something. But the number one thing is, if they're in an office, their desk is foreign territory. Don't you touch it. Don't you leave it completely alone. All right. It's marked. It's not for you to interfere with. If you're in a conference room, that might be a little different. Some people use an iPad. Some people use another device for doing the same thing instead of a PC. But I would still just ask, I'd like to take notes. Is that okay with you? I suggest that you walk in, and I like to open up a portfolio. And on the left side are my prioritized questions, and maybe a couple of, if I got 8 or 9 star stories, I got kind of a bullet for each story, so that I might quickly, as I'm thinking about it, I said, well, let me choose one. I've made some stories here, and you're looking for the appropriate story to tell. And then on the right side is where you're going to be taking notes. And so, and it's not bad to say, I do have a list of prepared questions if we have the time to get to those. Mm-hmm. All right, and say that. So, there's several options that you can have if you're able to find out about that person. If they're using a PC to ask your questions, that's a pretty good indicator you can use a PC to answer the questions. All right. So you just kind of feel it out and see how they would respond to it.
Yeah, Walt, I use your latter suggestion as my go-to. However, I come from the information technology industry, so any way that you can demonstrate those skills is viewed as positive.
Okay. Just make sure that they view it as positive.
Yeah, I like your idea about asking permission. Yeah. I think that's probably the critical point there.
Thank the Lord, there's not anybody else out there like me. So, they all doing things.
All right, Susan asked, how do we tactfully handle asking potential employers about overtime if there's concern that the job has a lot of OT?
Anybody got an idea of a kind of question that might demonstrate what their working hours are?
Ooh, I got one.
Okay, Jeff.
Can you tell me what a typical week is like around here?
Okay.
Or what the typical day is like?
Right. When's the last time you took a vacation? Right, Jeff? That's the one your son asked.
Yeah.
The
I think that's a
answer,
good question.
hadn't had one in 2 years. Okay. And there's a joke that says, the requirement says some overtime required, and the answer to that is some every night and some every weekend, you know. But you could just basically ask, what's the expectation on the number of hours you're expected to work? And that's kind of like a work-life balance question. But you can go ahead and ask. And the thing you want to ask is, don't ask it in a way that you're concerned about overtime, or you're concerned about too much work, or you're concerned. You just want to get information out, right? So that you don't want to displace it. Uh-oh, it's going to be a problem here. Because you know what? You can always refuse the offer, but you can negotiate things at the offer that you might want to say, I might want to do that. But if it's the company you want to work for and the job you want to do, don't let that stop you from getting to the negotiation stage.
Right. Anything else? Anybody else have a question before we move on? I think this is a really great topic. I mean, opening, you get a good, strong opening, it gets you going in the interview correctly. A good, strong closing sort of comes from your opening because you sort of tie it all together. I mean, it can really, I think, make a big difference in an interview.
There was a question from Susan that talked about illegality of overtime stuff. I would check with labor laws. I mean, I'm not familiar with all the labor laws, but somebody who does know labor laws, whether that's, does anybody know the answer to that question where they'll if you work overtime, they'll give you comp time the next week?
Yeah, I wouldn't think as a contract employee you could do that, but that's, I'm not an attorney. You need to check in with an attorney. Thomas, I see you have your hand up. You got a question?
Yeah, it's easier if I just do it verbally. Hope you don't mind.
Yeah.
I got a couple of interviews next week where I've already gone through a series of interviews with both owners and CEO of two different companies, and they're flying me out. So, this is kind of like, getting really close. How aggressive? Here's my question. How aggressive, how assertive do I continue to be? I've been really aggressive and assertive and confident, up until this point. Do I kind of just let it flow now and, or do I just keep, banging away like I have been? I'm almost to the point where I in one case, I know they're just going to make me an offer. I think they just want to see how fat I am and how many heads I have.
If you keep going and that aggressiveness is working and they're now wanting to see you face to face, to me, this is the closing part. They're just saying, are you actually the fit they think you are? I wouldn't change your tactics if they're working and you keep moving forward.
What's the role, Thomas?
Both roles are, in this case, they're both Southeast sales managers, two different companies, two different products, but Southeast sales manager. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I prefer an aggressive sales manager.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now, you don't have to be too aggressive, all right? But if you just show your interest and enthusiasm in accomplishing what they're trying to get you to accomplish, that will show more than just the aggressiveness. You don't want to be pushy, in other words.
Right.
Persistent, yes.
Okay. And then just a quick follow-up. I recently flew out to Dallas, as a matter of fact, and had an interview, and I dressed in a suit and, fine leather shoes and a tie, and I think I overdid it, and I think it cost me. Do I dial this back and do blazer, and kind of become a little bit more, I don't know, less formal? Does that make sense?
The simple
So let me
answer-
ask you, go ahead. Well,
Go ahead.
so when you go on a sales call, what is your typical customer expect? Do they expect a suit and a tie, or do they expect a blazer and an
Yeah,
open collar business shirt?
Yeah, they're going to expect a polo shirt in both these environments, and even the CEO that I interviewed on the Microsoft Teams call last week. I mean, he was wearing a fancy T-shirt.
I wouldn't know that.
I suggest is match them and maybe a half a step up.
Yeah.
I'll do the blazer then. Okay.
Yeah.
I know when I interviewed with AWS, I didn't do my homework. I went out in a full suit and tie, And I was actually hearing comments being made about me behind my back about, who's the monkey in the room.
Yeah,
So
that's-
I didn't do my homework, so be careful with that. I
Yeah,
think you just kind of gave yourself an answer.
okay, thank you, guys.
All right, well, we're just about at the bottom of the hour here, so thanks, Ron and Walt, for your comments. Just as a reminder, Career DFW, we're putting on training 4 days a week. Please join us. Let's see here. Tomorrow, being the first Thursday of the month, we're going to talk all about effective resumes. So we'll share resume tips. We'll share some format to use. And then if you'd like to share your resume, you're welcome to send us your draft resume. You can remove the header information because it will be on Zoom and, but if you'd like to share your resume, we'll give you feedback on that at the end. We can look at 1 or 2 of them usually. This Friday at the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group meeting, 9:30 Central Time in the morning, we will do open forum. We'll talk about whatever it is you'd like to talk about. And you're welcome to offer your opinions, suggestions, comments, everything career related. That's what we'll do this Friday. The 13-part workshops, Mark talked about this at the beginning. There are 13 sessions that are out there. They're all on the Career USA YouTube channel. The first 5 sessions are what do you do before the interview? The second 5 sessions are what do you do during the interview? That's what today was session number 6. And then the last 3 sessions are some advanced topics to sort of tie everything together. So everything is out on the Career USA YouTube channel. On the Career USA YouTube channel, just click on playlist and then you can pick interviewing. Don't click on the video, but down below where it says view full playlist, you can click there and you can go back and watch any of the sessions that you'd like to watch at your convenience.
And Jeff, are the slide decks available for each presentation?
I don't know, Walt, what do you, I think sometimes we don't tend to put slide decks out because without the words, sometimes they miss some of the good stuff. So that's why we tend not to do that, but I don't know if Walt.
Well,
Could I obtain a copy of today's deck?
we made a cognizant decision that since we're recording these, you can go back to the recording and make your notes and do that. It came from a decision that of all over the years, obviously people ask for copies of things, they never look at them. But if you would like a copy of it specifically, send me an email, waltonlineglass@yahoo.com, which is generally what I use for the workshop. And I will supply you this deck.
Okay, I would much appreciate that. Could you
And you can't
drop
tell
that
any-
into the chat?
Yeah, you can't tell anybody else online that I did that.
I think you already did, Walt.
Well, it's not my fault. But yeah.
Thank you.
anybody-
I
if anybody
appreciate that, though.
wants a
I like to
copy,
go back and make notes on the actual slide deck. I have my handwritten notes, but to me, it just makes more sense when you have the full view of what you shared.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. You come and take the workshop, and we cover openings and closings in the workshop of the several things that are closed. And you get a video of that basic fundamentals interview on selling, who we are, what we do, and how we help. And I have a handout that goes over those things with a video too. So that's another way you can get more information.
Great.
Okay. And your Yahoo address, are you going to drop it in the chat?
It's in there.
Walt. Walt_glass@yahoo.com.
Yeah, it's sort of towards the beginning, but I know it's in
Ah,
there.
okay.
So if you're not receiving emails about our workshops, you'd like to join the Career USA mailing list, you're welcome to do so. Just send an email to Career USA, the +sign, subscribe@groups.io. You'll never be spammed, but what you will get is the title of the day, the topic of the day, and most importantly, the Zoom link of the day. That way you can join us for our sessions. Please remember, Career DFW, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have no full or part-time employees. All of our Ron, Walt, Mark, all volunteers. I'm a volunteer. Everything I've done over the last 14 years has just been to help you land your next great opportunity. So thank you for joining us today, everybody. Thanks for being with us. Have a good Wednesday afternoon, and we hope to see you Thursday or Friday.
Bye.